Another year of the NBA, another Washington Wizards locker room drama. This time, the drama seems to be between Scott Brooks and John Wall, and reports have emerged that Brooks simply cannot coach John Wall. But the issues stem deeper than this, as the Wizards are looking to trade Otto Porter, Bradley Beal, and even Wall himself. But how the hell did we get to this point? This video will examine the entire history of the Washington Wizards under their general manager, Ernie Grunfield. Ernie has been with the Wizards for an incredible 15 years, and has never managed to win 50 games, never made the conference finals, and has consistently mortgaged his team's future to fail in the present. Ernie Grunfield took over the team in 2003 from Michael Jordan, and initially made some really solid moves. He signed Gilbert Arenas to a 6-year, $60 million deal that would pay absolute dividends for the team as he exploded into one of the best scorers in the entire league. He also traded for Antoine Jameson, kept Larry Hughes, and acquired Caron Butler. This team would struggle for a year and then immediately gel to success and make 4 playoff series in a row. Here, they would lose to the Cavaliers 3 straight times and the Heat once. It would be remembered as a time where the Wizards were okay, but they could never quite make it over the top. Does that sound familiar? And then, disaster would strike. Gilbert Arenas would injure his knee in a devastating fashion in the same year that his contract was set to expire. The NBA has just gone through a similar occurrence with DeMarcus Cousins and his Achilles injury. Boogie is arguably an even better player than Arenas was at the time, and he only signed a 1-year deal worth $5 million. There were, however, reports of him being offered 2-year, $40 million deals, but these were all around 20% of the cap and for a limited number of seasons. It would have been risky, but nowhere near as risky as what Ernie Grunfield would do. So Gilbert Arenas was injured, and it didn't look good. So Ernie signed him to a 6-year, $110 million deal, and at the time this was around a whole third of the salary cap. It was max money and one of the biggest contracts ever. The Golden State Warriors had offered Arenas a 5-year deal worth $100 million, and so Ernie's hand had somewhat been forced. But I think in this situation, you just have to bite the bullet and let the injured man walk. But Ernie wasn't biting any bullet. Instead, he would be getting destroyed by one. Arenas would never return to the player he once was, and would eventually have to be cut loose from the team. Instead of continuing to make the playoffs, the team would win less than 29 games in 5 straight seasons. Even if you intended to tank during this time, the record would still be pretty terrible. You simply don't tank for that many seasons in a row. But if you did, you would hope to God that you had an amazing team full of young talent on the rise. So let's take a look at what Grunfield did with his picks. In 2009, he traded the 5th pick and some young players to the Timberwolves for Randy Foye and Mike Miller. 2 guys who were decent and had potential, but not somebody you trade for the 5th pick in the draft. And this was a loaded draft as well, with Ricky Rubio, Steph Curry, DeMar DeRozan, Brandon Jennings, Jeff Teague, and Drew Holiday all taken around this pick. But there is also the chance that he wouldn't have picked either of these players. Grunfield doesn't exactly have the best draft record out there. In the second year of the tank, the Wizards were gifted the biggest blessing of their franchise, the #1 pick, and a slam dunk selection in John Wall. Fast, athletic, tall point guards with incredible vision don't grow on trees. But I can't give Ernie much credit here. My dog would have taken one look at Wall and barked his name into the selection phone to David Stern. And Ernie has had almost no idea how to build around his star since day one. But we'll get to that later. In the next year's draft, the Wizards had the 6th pick in the 2011 draft, one of the best drafts in recent history. Ernie would select Jan Veasley over an incredible amount of talent. Everyone was surprised at the time, and there is no doubt as to why. Nearly every single player picked in the next 10 to 15 picks would go on to have strong careers in the NBA. But not Jan. He was touted as a leaper out of Europe, but he couldn't shoot, wasn't as athletic as they thought, and just didn't really have the temperament for the NBA. It was a massive reach and one of the worst selections of Grunfield's career. Jan would play 3 years in the NBA and 162 games in total before being traded for the very old Andre Miller and a 2nd round pick. To put it in perspective, these are the players taken after Jan. Bismack Biyombo, Kemba Walker, Klay Thompson, the Morris twins, Kawhi Leonard, Nikola Vucevic, Tobias Harris, Nikola Mirotic, Reggie Jackson, Corey Joseph, and Jimmy Butler. Yikes. But don't worry, 1 year later, the Wizards would draft Beal over a bunch of players who many thought they should take. Grunfield stuck to his guts, and for once it paid off. After this, he would take Otto Porter in a weakish draft, and while Giannis and Rudy Gobert were also available, I don't think any GM would have taken them with the 3rd pick in the draft. So he nailed back-to-back picks and had John Wall. This isn't that bad, and for a time, I actually thought the Wizards had a really strong future. But don't worry, Ernie Grunfield had other plans for you, me, John Wall, Bradley Beal, and the poor, poor city of Washington. Ernie would trade 3 of his next 5 first-round picks in order to get Gortat, Markieff Morris, and then to rent Bogdan Bogdanovic for half a season. These trades are simply beyond short-sighted, and while Gortat and Morris were decent players, they were never going to be the pieces required to take the team over the edge. Of all the trades, I think the Morris one was the best, as he's a hard-nosed player who can shoot threes, play defense, and grab rebounds. And while Gortat was okay for this team for a while, he wasn't the kind of center that is suited for John Wall. Wall really wants a defensive center who can help to anchor the defense while also being athletic enough to follow him in transition, catch lobs, and set strong screens. Gortat was talented offensively and had great hands, but he couldn't jump over a cat and was a pretty bad defender. This really limited the pick and roll sets that Wall could run with him, and the team was crying out for a guy like Clint Capella. And as a result, Ernie would go out and try and sign one, Ian Mahinmi. They would sign him amongst the big man bonanza of 2016 to a 4-year, $64 million deal. I mean, a fair few GMs fell for this trap. Timofey Mozgov and Bismack Biyombo also got big deals. But all of these GMs are not the greatest. But what was particularly bad about this deal was that he signed it at the same time as they had to extend Bradley Beal. This saw the Wizards capped out and they couldn't sign any more free agents after this. And then, when they had to sign Otto Porter the year after, the team was locked in with a gigantic long-term salary cap. They would either have to trade first-round picks to clear salaries or nail every mid-level exception signing they did. If they didn't sign Mahinmi, then they could have preserved cap space and waited another offseason to go after a free agent and make a move before signing Porter Junior. Now I have to say here, signing Porter, Beal and Wall to their original extensions were all good moves. The Wizards are a small market team and they aren't going to be signing many unrestricted free agents to their squad. But again, this is partially due to their bad reputation, which is due to Ernie. The man couldn't even get a free agency meeting with Durant, and it was his hometown city. So they had to sign these guys. The problem is that they couldn't nail a single other move to bring success to the team. In order to win in the NBA, you need to make sure you nail your late first round picks every now and then, draft a decent player in the second round, make good trades, or sign decent players in free agency. Grunfield did none of these things. He wasted picks in trades, didn't nail the ones he had, and has basically never nailed a second round pick in his career. Ladies and gentlemen, he might actually be the worst general manager of all time. And somehow, he hasn't been fired. Not after leading the franchise to a terrible 5-year stretch. Not after wasting the best years of John Wall on a good contract. And not after signing Ian Mahinmi to a terrible deal that sealed them away to mediocrity. Heck, I'm starting to worry if he could even get fired. If he trade Bradley Beal for half a packet of twisties and season tickets to the G League, he would probably walk into the office to find a contract extension waiting for him. Before we move to looking at the Wizards now, I just wanted to point out that the only GMs to survive as long as Grunfield are R.C. Buford, Pat Riley, Danny Ainge, and Don Nelson, all of who have won championships and have shown the ability to identify talent and strategies to win long term. It is simply incredible that he hasn't been fired. And until he is, the Wizards will never, ever be a good or great team. And now the Wizards find themselves with a roster that should be good enough to win in terms of talent, but a team that doesn't quite click. With Porter, Wall, Beal, Morris, Oubre Junior and Dwight Howard, as well as some other solid players in Austin Rivers and Jeff Green, the Wizards should be okay, but they play with no semblance of togetherness or teamwork. The team seems to either have the ball in Wall or Beal's hands, and it's simply up to them to make a play for themselves or their teammates. There is no offensive system. Now you might think that this is a fine way to play ball, especially when you have scorers and passers as good as Wall and Beal. But it isn't the best way to create a team environment that is conducive to getting the best out of each other and winning basketball games. Scott Brooks hasn't been able to convince Wall to play off ball at all, and John will frequently stand above the 3-point line waiting for the ball when he doesn't have it. This is the most damaging thing you can do when off ball, as you aren't a threat to shoot a 3 and you're cramping the spacing for your teammates. And it is frustrating to watch, as with his height, speed and strength, Wall would make for a fantastic cutter and it would help open up the floor for when Beal runs his actions. Players from the Wizards have hinted at this issue over the years, and many believe Wall could give the ball up just a little bit more. But at the same time, he's clearly the best player and the driving force behind the team. But it is also clear that this team simply isn't going to work, and the Wizards are looking like they will be making a move in order to try and clear cap space, get young assets, and move on from this era. They sort of have to, because Ernie Grunfield has completely cooked their salary books. They have over $100 million committed for this season and the next 2 after that, limiting their options in free agency. And then they have 2 seasons with Wall being paid $45 million after these. It is now one of the biggest contracts in the NBA, and while Wall is a great player, it is a scary price to pay. Having it on your books really limits the options of the team, and I think a lot of franchises will be hesitant to take it on. And that doesn't even mention the trade kicker that the contract has, meaning that teams will have to pay even more for Wall. For this reason, I can't see the Wizards managing to trade their star, and I think it is more likely that they move Beal or Porter. But like Wall, Porter is way too overpaid for his production. I think teams will be willing to take Porter on as he brings defense, threes, and a hustle that is rare in the NBA. But the return isn't going to be stellar due to his contract. And for this reason, the one player I can see being traded is Beal. Bradley has another 2 years on his deal after this one, and is fairly priced at $27 and $28 million per year. He's a proven scorer and 3-point shooter, and these things don't grow on trees. His 3-point percentage has been down this season, but I think that these numbers would go up on another team with more spacing and cohesion on the offensive end. I could see the Lakers, Hornets, and even the Celtics potentially being really interested in Beal, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see every team in the league inquiring about him. It is very rare that you see a 25-year-old amazing shooting guard who is athletic and can shoot threes on the trading market. But I guess that is just Ernie Grunfield for you. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications as well. And let me know in the comments below what you think the Wizards should do this season.